The arrival of the Eternal Dominion. The Galactic Assembly had witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires over millions of years, but nothing had prepared them for the arrival of the Cretherian Eternal Dominion. Their ships didn't simply travel through space. They folded reality itself, appearing simultaneously in 1,000 star systems as if the universe had suddenly sprouted new metallic flowers made of impossible geometries. Ambassador Selkoth of the Mantari Federation watched through his compound eyes as the assembly hall erupted in panic. Representatives from over 300 civilizations scrambled to understand what they were witnessing on their screens. The Cretherian vessels defied every known law of physics. They existed in multiple dimensions at once, their hulls shifting between solid matter and pure energy, in patterns that hurt to observe directly. The Mantari had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years, with their antimatter technology. The Vorthak Collective had achieved virtual immortality through their consciousness transfer networks. The Etherian hegemony could manipulate gravity wells to create artificial black holes. Yet all of these mighty civilizations fell silent as the first Cretherian transmission reached them. Supreme Overseer Crithax appeared on every screen simultaneously, though each species saw him differently. To some he appeared as pure light. To others, as geometric patterns that conveyed meaning beyond words. His message, however, was universally clear. The Eternal Dominion had come to bring order to the chaos of the galaxy. Resistance would result in immediate dissolution of atomic structure. Compliance would grant survival under Cretherian rule. The demonstration came swiftly. The abandoned planet Xerion 5, a dead world that had served as a weapons testing ground for centuries, was chosen as an example. The Cretherians didn't destroy it with conventional weapons. Instead, they simply convinced its atoms that they no longer wished to remain together. The planet unraveled like a ball of yarn, its matter dispersing into a cloud of elementary particles that spelled out a message visible from light years away. Submit. Within 3 galactic standard days, the Vorthak Collective surrendered their entire fleet without firing a single shot. Their immortal consciousness had calculated the probability of survival at 0.001%. The Mantari Federation lasted slightly longer, managing to fire their antimatter cannons exactly once before realizing their weapons passed harmlessly through the Cretherian ships as if they existed in a different phase of reality. The Etherian hegemony attempted to trap a Cretherian vessel in an artificial black hole. The ship simply existed on both sides of the event horizon simultaneously, treating the gravitational prison as a minor inconvenience. After witnessing this, the Etherians transmitted their unconditional surrender and began dismantling their own military installations as a sign of good faith. One by one, the greatest powers in the known galaxy bent their knees to the Eternal Dominion. The Cretherians didn't need to fire their weapons again. The mere knowledge of their capability was enough to break the will of species that had conquered stars and mastered the fundamental forces of nature. It was during the 4th day of what historians would later call the Silent surrender that the Cretherians discovered Earth. The small blue planet orbited an unremarkable yellow star in a spiral arm that most galactic charts labeled as underdevelopment, no significant civilizations. The initial scans showed a species that had barely managed to leave their planet's orbit, still using chemical rockets and primitive nuclear fission. Overseer Crithax assigned the task of Earth submission to his youngest subordinate, Commander Vexil. It would be good practice for someone who had never conducted a submission before. After all, what could a species that still used combustion engines possibly do against reality-warping technology? Captain Maya Torres stood on the bridge of humanity's newest spacecraft, the UES Horizon. She had been selected to lead humanity's first long-range exploration mission beyond the solar system. Her crew of 30 represented Earth's best and brightest, scientists, engineers, diplomats, and soldiers. They had trained for 5 years to handle any situation that deep space might throw at them. What they hadn't trained for was a ship appearing directly in front of them with no warning, no approach vector, and no respect for the laws of physics. One moment, empty space stretched before them. The next, a Cretherian vessel materialized like a nightmare made of crystalline metal and pulsing energy. Lieutenant James Park, the ship's tactical officer, stared at his instruments in confusion. "Captain, I'm reading something impossible here. That ship is simultaneously 50 meters away and 5,000 kilometers distant." The computer can't lock onto its actual position because it keeps insisting the ship exists in 7 different locations at once. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the chief science officer, pulled up her own readings. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. It's as if they're using the quantum uncertainty principle as a propulsion system. This shouldn't be possible. Nothing with mass should be able to exist in quantum superposition at this scale. The alien ship transmitted its message directly into their minds, bypassing their communication systems entirely. Commander Vexel's words formed in their thoughts like their own inner voice, but speaking in harmonics that resonated through their bones. Primitive humans of Earth. I am Commander Vexil of the Critherian Eternal Dominion. Your planet has been selected for integration into our empire. You will cease all military activity and prepare for submission. Demonstration of our power will now commence. Through the viewports, the crew watched as an asteroid nearby began to shimmer. It didn't explode or break apart. Instead, it transformed, its rocky surface flowing like liquid as it reshaped itself into a perfect sphere, then a cube, then a complex geometric form that seemed to exist in more dimensions than human eyes could process. Finally, the asteroid simply ceased to be, its matter converted directly into a burst of pure light that spelled out words in English. Your weapons are meaningless. Captain Torres watched this display with an expression that Commander Vexil, observing through sensors that could read human facial muscles, interpreted as shock and awe. What he failed to understand was that Maya Torres wasn't frozen in fear. She was thinking. Years of military training kicked in as she analyzed what she had just witnessed. Dr. Okonkwo, she said calmly, did you record all of that? Every bit of it, Captain. The energy patterns, the matter conversion ratios, even the quantum signatures. Lieutenant Park, can you analyze their shield frequencies from the transmission? Already on it, Captain. They're using some kind of phase variance, but there's a pattern. Give me a few minutes. Commander Vexil waited for the humans to respond with the usual surrender transmission. Every other species had immediately recognized the futility of resistance after such a demonstration. Instead, Captain Torres activated the communication system and spoke in a steady voice that carried no trace of fear. Commander Vexil, this is Captain Maya Torres of the United Earthship Horizon. We acknowledge your superior technology and appreciate the demonstration. However, we'll need to consult with our government before making any decision about surrender. I'm sure you understand that proper protocols must be followed. The Critherian commander experienced something his species rarely felt. Surprise. Every other civilization had surrendered immediately upon witnessing their power. These humans, with their primitive technology, were asking for time to consider their options. It was simultaneously absurd and intriguing. You have 1 rotation of your planet to decide, Vexil transmitted. After that, we will begin the dissolution of your major cities as an example. Thank you for your patience, Torres replied politely, as if she were discussing a trade agreement rather than the potential extinction of her species. We'll be in touch. As the Critherian ship phased out of local space-time, Torres turned to her crew. Every face on the bridge showed the same expression. Not fear, not despair, but determination mixed with curiosity. All right, people, she announced. We've got 24 hours to figure out how these things work and how to fight them. Park, I want tactical analysis of everything we just saw. Okonkwo, get me theories on their technology. Rodriguez, plot a course back to Earth, maximum speed. We need to warn the United Nations, Captain Rodriguez ventured. Did you see what they did to that asteroid? How can we possibly fight something like that? Torres smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. The same way humans have always dealt with supposedly invincible enemies. We adapt, we learn, and we find their weakness. Everyone has one, even reality-bending aliens who think they're gods. As the horizon accelerated toward Earth, none of the crew members showed the despair that had consumed other species. Instead, they worked with an intensity that would have puzzled the Critherians. Humans had faced extinction before from asteroids, plagues, wars, and their own foolishness. Each time, they had survived through stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The Critherians had made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had judged them by their technology alone, not understanding that humans had survived and thrived, not because of their tools, but because of something far more dangerous. Their ability to look at impossible odds and ask, but what if we tried this instead? The human paradox commander Vexel materialized his ship in Earth's orbit exactly 24 hours after the first contact, expecting to receive humanity's surrender. Instead, he found something that defied all precedent in the Eternal Dominion's 1,000-year history of conquest. Earth hadn't surrendered. They had mobilized. Every orbital defense platform, primitive as they were, had been activated and pointed skyward. Military satellites that the Critherians' initial scans had dismissed as obsolete were now forming geometric patterns around the planet. Cities hadn't evacuated in panic. Instead, they had implemented something the humans called blackout protocols. The entire planet had gone dark, making it harder for orbital targeting systems to lock onto population centers. Most disturbing of all, the humans were broadcasting. Not surrender signals or pleas for mercy, but what appeared to be entertainment programs, news broadcasts showing citizens going about their daily lives, and something called memes that Vexel's translation matrices couldn't properly interpret. It was as if the entire species had collectively decided to ignore the threat of annihilation. Secretary General Amara Osei appeared on the main communication channel, broadcasting from the United Nations headquarters in New York. She was a tall woman with graying hair and eyes that held no trace of fear. Commander Vexel, Earth has considered your proposal for integration into the Eternal Dominion. After careful deliberation, we must respectfully decline. We prefer our independence. Vexel's crystalline form pulsed with patterns that his species used to express disbelief. You cannot decline. This is not a negotiation. You have witnessed our power. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your shields cannot stop us. Surrender, or we will demonstrate the consequences of defiance. Secretary General Osei nodded thoughtfully. Yes, about that demonstration. We've prepared something of our own. Perhaps you'd like to observe. Before Vexel could respond, alarms began screaming across his ship. The primitive human vessels, mere metal cans with chemical thrusters, had done something impossible. They had fired what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles, chunks of metal accelerated to high velocity. But these projectiles weren't aimed at the Critherian ship. They were aimed at the space around it, creating a pattern that took Vexel's quantum processors several seconds to recognize. The humans had somehow calculated the exact positions where his ship would phase into existence. During its quantum superposition state, they couldn't hit a ship that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, but they could fill those dimensions with obstacles. It was like threading a needle, if the needle existed in 7 dimensions and the thread was made of relativistic tungsten rods. One projectile passed harmlessly through the ship's phased hull. Then another. Then a third made contact during the brief millisecond when the ship solidified to recalibrate its position. The impact was negligible by Critherian standards, barely scratching the crystalline armor, but the fact that it had happened at all sent shockwaves through Vexel's consciousness. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, something even more troubling was occurring. The humans weren't cowering in their shelters. They were conducting what they called alien watch parties. Citizens gathered on rooftops with telescopes and smartphones, live streaming the confrontation to billions of viewers. Social media platforms were flooded with suggestions for fighting the aliens, ranging from scientifically plausible to completely absurd. Someone in Tokyo had started selling anti-Critherian t-shirts. A group of teenagers in London had composed what they called a diss track about Commander Vexel, which had somehow gone viral across the planet in the past hour. Scientists in laboratories worldwide were openly sharing their analysis of Critherian technology, treating the invasion like a collaborative puzzle to be solved. Captain Torres, aboard the Horizon, transmitted directly to the Critherian ship. Commander, you should know that we've been studying your technology. It's impressive, but it has limitations. Your reality warping requires enormous energy expenditure. Our sensors detected a 0.7-second recalibration period after each phase shift. Your matter dissolution weapon needs direct line of sight and takes 3.4 seconds to charge. Vexel's response came as a roar that resonated through every electronic device on Earth. You dare analyze the technology of gods? You insects think your primitive understanding means anything against our power? We will dissolve your cities and scatter your atoms across the cosmos. The Critherian ship began charging its primary weapon, aimed directly at New York City. The energy buildup was visible from the ground, a swirling vortex of light that seemed to tear at the fabric of space itself. Millions of humans should have been fleeing in terror. Instead, they stood in the streets recording the event on their phones. Then something unprecedented happened. Every single human on Earth who had access to a laser pointer, from children's toys to industrial cutting tools, aimed them at the Cretherian ship simultaneously. It was absurd, pointless, and should have been completely ineffective. A few million low-powered lasers couldn't possibly damage a ship protected by reality-warping shields, but the humans hadn't aimed at the ship. They had aimed at the exact point where the matter dissolution beam was forming. The combined photon interference, while insignificant in terms of damage, created just enough quantum noise to disrupt the weapon's targeting matrix for a fraction of a second. The beam fired, but instead of hitting New York, it struck empty ocean, vaporizing water and creating a massive steam cloud but causing no casualties. Dr. Okonkwo's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Commander Vexel, are you familiar with the concept of asymmetric warfare? You see, humans have been fighting each other for millennia. We've gotten very good at finding creative ways to level playing fields. Your technology is superior, but it operates on principles we can observe and exploit." The next phase of humanity's response was even more bizarre. They began broadcasting directly to the Cretherian ship, but not with weapons or threats. They sent music, art, literature, and something they called cat videos. Petabytes of human culture flooded the Cretherian systems faster than their filters could process. It wasn't an attack exactly, but it was overwhelming in its sheer chaotic diversity. Philosophers sent treatises on the nature of existence. Children sent drawings of what they thought Cretherians looked like. One grandmother in Mumbai sent her recipe for chicken curry, along with a note saying that proper nutrition was important, even for reality-warping aliens. The Australian military rickrolled the entire Cretherian fleet simultaneously, though no human could adequately explain why this was considered a victory. Commander Vexil found his ship's quantum processors increasingly strained, trying to make sense of humanity's response. Every other species had reacted with logic, with fear, with calculated surrender or desperate resistance. Humans were doing both and neither simultaneously. They were treating an existential threat like a problem to be solved, a challenge to be overcome, and somehow, a source of entertainment. The tipping point came when a teenager in São Paulo named Carlos managed to hack into the Cretherian communication network using nothing but a modified gaming console and what he described as sick coding skills. He didn't try to shut down their systems or steal their data. Instead, he installed what humans called a screensaver, featuring dancing animated hamsters. For the first time in the 1,000-year history of the Eternal Dominion, a Cretherian warship had been pranked. Overseer Crithax himself materialized in Earth's orbit, his massive command ship dwarfing even Vexil's vessel. His presence should have ended all resistance. The Overseer had personally dissolved 17 civilizations that had dared defy the Dominion. His arrival meant that patience had ended and annihilation was imminent. "Humans of Earth," his transmission echoed across every frequency. "Your defiance is noted and will be punished. You have one final opportunity to surrender before we remove your species from existence." Secretary General Osei responded with calm dignity. "Overseer Crithax, we appreciate your position, but we must point out something you may have overlooked. In the past 72 hours, our entire species has united in a way we never have before. Every nation, every culture, every individual is working together against a common threat. You've accomplished something we couldn't do ourselves in thousands of years of trying. We're grateful for that, but we still won't surrender. Then you will be destroyed." "Perhaps," Osei replied. "But consider this. We've damaged your ships with primitive kinetic weapons. We've disrupted your targeting systems with laser pointers. A teenager hacked your communications with a gaming device. What do you think we'll manage if you give us more time? Humans are remarkably creative when facing extinction. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own stupidity. We'll survive you too, or we'll make sure the victory costs you more than you're willing to pay." The standoff lasted for 13 hours. During that time, humans continued their bizarre form of resistance. They held concerts visible from orbit, spelling out messages of defiance with city lights. Scientists publicly published papers on potential weaknesses in Cretherian technology. The entire population of New Zealand performed a synchronized haka that was somehow detected by the alien sensors. Then something unexpected happened. A child in Kenya named Amara, the same age as Commander Vexel in Critherian years, managed to establish a direct emotional connection with the young commander through a quantum entanglement that shouldn't have been possible with human technology. She didn't threaten or plead. She simply asked, "Why do you need to conquer us? There's enough universe for everyone." The question resonated through the Critherian collective consciousness in a way that no weapon could have. The Eternal Dominion had never questioned why they conquered, only how. The concept of coexistence without dominance was as alien to them as their technology was to humans. Overseer Crythax observed the humans for a long moment, his consciousness spanning multiple dimensions as he considered something unprecedented. These primitives had achieved something no advanced civilization had managed. They had made the Eternal Dominion pause and reconsider. In the end, it wasn't humanity's weapons that saved them, nor their creativity, nor their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was their paradoxical nature, their ability to face annihilation with defiance, humor, and hope simultaneously. They were chaos incarnate yet capable of unity. They were primitive yet innovative. They were afraid yet fearless. The Critherian ships began to phase out of Earth's orbit, not in victory but in something resembling respect. Overseer Crythax's final transmission was brief. "Your species is marked as quarantined. The Eternal Dominion will not return to this sector. You are too dangerous in your unpredictability." As the alien fleet disappeared into folded space-time, humanity erupted in celebration. They had faced gods and refused to kneel, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple, audacious refusal to accept that resistance was futile. Secretary General Osei addressed the planet with tears in her eyes. Today, humanity proved that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. We stood together and we stood tall. The universe now knows that humans do not bow easily. In the depths of space, aboard his command ship, Overseer Crythax filed his report on the human encounter. His conclusion would puzzle Critherian scholars for generations. Humans possess minimal technology and maximum audacity. They are simultaneously the weakest and most dangerous species encountered. Recommendation: avoid all future contact. They are infected with something we cannot fight: hope. Captain Torres and the crew of the Horizon became the first human ambassadors to the greater galaxy. But their message to other species was simple: humanity is here. We're weird and we're not going anywhere. The universe had learned an important lesson that day. When faced with impossible odds, most species calculate probability and surrender to logic. Humans calculate probability, laugh at it, and ask, "But what if we tried anyway?" And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to make even gods think twice.